100 years ago, they would use newspaper to stuff this, so they wouldn't have to use so much mortar. But we now have polyurethane, and if I can put this in there and without getting too much outside, it would be good. But I can trim it back, cut it back, and it will provide a nice surface to put mortar on. And newspaper, of course, wouldn't stick the tile to the, you know, to everything, but this sure will. I've seen guys fill this cavity completely with mortar, and the next guy who has to deal with this curses whoever that was. This should perform adhesive function and filling function. And birds repellent, maybe it'll attract them, I don't know. I'm getting a feel of this on the side that's easy to see, so I can this is the 3-inch big gap filler, so I'm thinking it's going to expand a lot. Sticking to the top part. It's kind of falling away from the top. Maybe I should direct it more onto the top. I don't want this stuff expanding so much that it pops up the hip tile. Taking more than I expected. I got this stuff on a really nice North Face jacket, and I tried every solvent. Well, there are some commercial solvents that would work, but you have to buy a 55-gallon drum of it. Now it's starting to fill, expand. And if you can jab at it, it will form a kind of a rough surface that the mortar's more likely to stick to. Oops. Okay, that's looking good so far. This is out a little far. Where can I wipe this? And this is out too far, but it cuts back real easy. But that's easier yet than cutting it back by just disturbing it. See, it's not grabbing up underneath. It's better just to let that dry and knock it off than to try to scrape it off. It just smears it around. Yeah, that looks good. You'll want a 1/2 inch of mortar. I think 1/4 would be too thin. Yeah, it's starting to grow now. I don't mind those little holes now and then. It'll give a place the mortar to key into. Like that'll help the mortar key into it. Okay, here's what's on the menu for today. We're about ready to point the ridge. Now the ridge, I don't know if you can see it, the ridge from the main roof fits so well it doesn't need it, but the hip extensions, the pitch changes. The main roof is about a 12, this is, I don't know, in the 20s, 12. So there's the large gaps, which I filled that side with foam. Today I'll fill this side with foam. And then there's going to be the pointing of it. Now I have brick mortar here, and I can use a brick mortar with some dye. This is liquid cement colorant, and I don't like liquid cement colorants because it's hard to gauge the color you're going to end up with. Yeah, they have some formulas, but who can read how fine that print is? So, but the masonry store was not open, so I'm not able to get the dry. Today's Sunday. I'm not able to get the dry. And why I want the dry is if I put the dry colorant in with the brick mortar or tuck pointing mix, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. If I put the dry color in with that and mix it really, really well, that is the color that will end up when it dries. So you can't go by the wet color. The wet color is going to be way too dark. All right, so in this bucket I have sugar sand. This is sugar sand, and it's much finer than, that's the largest aggregate. It's much finer than the aggregate, and around here it comes from the Merrimack River, so there's no lignite, little black particles that rust. Now in the bottom of this I have straight Portland cement, and I put in a dab, maybe a tablespoon at most, of black powder. So why I put black in here is I want to tone it down. I don't want, I know this is terracotta, so it's kind of already toned down as compared to the red, but I just want to knock the brightness off. And since I'm doing this video, I wanted to show, you know, the use of pigments and straight Portland cement, right? So there is no lime in this mixture here, but in the brick mortar, see, it's, notice this color, right? And I haven't even mixed it very much, although there is a little black. But the brick mortar, well, it's not much off the color, but it has lime in it, and so it tends, I was surprised how close the color was, it tends to dry a lot lighter than the tuck pointing mix. And the tuck pointing mix, this is what I'm calling tuck pointing mix: 1 part Portland, 3 parts sand, typically sugar sand, so you get the really fine joints. So it depends on the kind of work you're doing, and if I mix this more and more and more, it'll get darker and darker and darker as the dry black pigment. Now the dry black pigment is carbon black, so it's just made by burning some, well, that's how they made it in chemistry days. You would get a flame and let the flame burn yellow on a piece of glass or something, and what you get is carbon black. And that's what this is carbon black. Incomplete combustion of a hydrocarbon will leave you with this black soot, and the black soot is carbon black, and it's very stable, but it's also an impurity, so you can't use a lot of it. It's like putting dirt in your, although very refined dirt, in your mortar mix. So I can save, I'm going to save this now and put it in a container, and I don't have lids for these, so I'll put it in this container and then put it in a 5-gallon bucket. There's some storms in the area, so I don't want this to get wet, and I also want to divide it in 2 and use it on both sides if I can. Now I may just use the brick mortar for the first fill and then come back over the top with this, but this still needs the red color added to it, and I would add the red color to that as well. So so that's that. And look, I can put the tuck pointing tools in there. Now I have lead to cover the joint on the other side. Here's my water container, so I can take water and a mixing thingy bucket along with my tuck pointing and have that as either the first coat or something in reserve. So I don't want this to look, you know, like new. It's already looks really new. So I wanted to keep the, you know, charm. And I know some people point this in with untinted mortar, but what you see when you look up there is white scallops. You don't see the beauty. You aren't left with the beauty of the roof. You're left with these white scallops until they get dirty. I mean, it doesn't take but a year or so to get dirty, but it's not that much trouble to put some red dye in it. And the other thing I wanted to say is, if I were to doing this on a multi-million-dollar house and the lady is seeing this from her circular driveway, I would want to mix up several batches of different color concentrations and present this to her, and so she can choose. So some after, and she says, well, can you make that a little darker? You can say, sure, but you know, you gave her a choice. But now, you know, you can say, yeah, it's gonna be $3,000, and she just spent that much on a pair of high heels, so she'll have no problem with that. But if you don't give her a choice ahead of time, it's gonna be hard to have that conversation. I pulled out this tuck pointing tool rake, and it's relatively new. And can you see the blue here? And it changes in colors until it gets really dark. I don't know if you can see that. Well, this thing has been tempered, so after it was made, they heat this up red hot and either dumped it in some oil or water, and you get this color variation. Otherwise the whole thing would look like this, but it has this hue color variation, so it's been tempered. So here we are putting the big gap filler, great stuff, on this side. See if you can save it overnight. I've never had much luck at that. With that, oh my gosh, yes, look, oh my gosh, it works. I bought an extra can just in case. Getting it to stick to something to start up in there is sort of a challenge. There's some bird of prey over there in the sky. Where else? Oh, here it comes. Look at it. Checking us out. Looks like a red-tailed hawk. trimming the great stuff back, and I haven't done this so much that I know the exact perfect tool that will accomplish this, but I'm using this whatever tool it is. What is it? Olfa, OLFA. Yes, I think that's a Swedish something or other that they sell at Home Depot. So I got it. I want to make sure the mortar can attach to the tile. If I possibly can. All the way around. I make sure I have a trash bag, and then I just scrape it and let it fall on the ground. Getting a trash bag looks good on a video though. I'm gonna put the big pieces in there. That looks good. Now, any amount of this foam that gets on anything that the sun is exposed to, the sun just destroys this FOMO stuff. But if it's up underneath, it's gonna be there for a long time until the cosmos shrink and we return to the before the Big Bang. Anyway, most of the work that I do, I use lifetime warranty everything. Lifetime warranty paints, lifetime warranty caulks, and so the work I do is gonna outlast the lifetime of me, you, whoever I'm doing it for. At least that's presumed. I don't know how they come up with it. Is it a wager? Do they have actuarial tables on what lifetime is? Now see this wire, I'm gonna have to bring the mortar down to cover the wire, or cut the wire out of here. That's probably what I'll do. And this piece, I've got it siliconed in, FOMO filled in, and this wire isn't gonna, it's pinned by this piece above it. So I don't want to take out too much of this. I can actually see that this is going to be a fairly big fill. But if I take these kind of like gouges things out, it gives a place for the mortar to key into while it sets up. it's not going to impact anything that concerns this roof. I wonder if YouTube can pick up that music coming from someone's radio and it's going to say I am exceeding the I want the mortar to be able to get on that tile. So I'm looking to see, this is going to be at least a 1/2 inch fill. Now I can bring the mortar out around here. I'm even okay with letting this wire show. I mean, it's red, right? Tile's red. It's all good. Let me put a little place in here where the mortar can key into. There's lots of little hollow places, which is good for the mortar to grab onto. I want to get this peak back without taking any more out of the underneath part. Alright, and I did this earlier so I wouldn't look so stupid at pulling out this tool and then it not work at all. But at least you would have known not to use that tool, so even publishing what doesn't work has its merits. And there's a lot of academic research about things that are not published and don't work because they didn't have positive results. So no one has the benefit. It's people keep doing what doesn't work over and over and then don't publish it. And there's a name for that phenomenon, like file 13 research, something. It just no researcher, no academic wants to publish. Now see, this is all good, but I need to get a little something so the mortar can bite into it. That's going to be a large fill right there as it is. I might mix up some brick mortar and put that in there before I do the perfect color mortar. I'm going to mix up a little of the brick mortar and use it as kind of a fill, so I'm not wasting any of the good stuff. And I want to see how this kind of works. The trouble with it is you can't just add it straight to the mortar. You have to have it a little bit wet. Otherwise, I don't know, putting wet colorant in mortar is going to make it clump. I don't understand how that makes a good mix. So if you add it to the water, then in order to get more color, you have to add more water. So I guess they didn't call and ask me what they should do before they did this. I lost this tool for a couple of years, put it somewhere I couldn't find it. So we'll add a little bit of this. Now, I'm not really going to be able to see the results unless, you know, kind of, well, I'm not going to be able to see the results of this, doing this. See, I'm used to adding the dry stuff and mixing it all up, and while it's dry, it'll be the approximate color. Now this bottle goes for a whole bag of concrete, so I don't know what, it's pretty intense. Wow, look at that. But what we need to do is set aside a little bit of it and let it dry and see what it does. I have a board over here. I probably added way too much, but look, we'll put it in this can. There, this lid, great stuff lid. Let's see what happens to it. And in the meantime, let's see if I can get some of this stick up in here. It's the same hue as the tile. So maybe this would work. And I wanted to talk about the tuck pointing mix. Now, what we don't want to do is smear it on the brick. This typically dries considerably lighter. Look at this. I'm going to be able to so, as I said before, this has lime in it, so it's more sticky than just the tuck pointing mix that I mixed up. Alright, let's just finish this off with the other. And I'm going to use this in here. see if there's any other big fills. What I could do is just finish this off with this and then fly the drone by sometime later and look and see what this looks like. Yeah, I can get a drone shot through here. So maybe I'll do that. I'll just do this, the rest of this fill with this. And it mix it as well as I could. There's a little, see that unmixed stuff on there. All right, so we'll. Of course, I didn't use any standardize on color. I just poured some in. I mean, how do you know what you do? How you work with this tuck pointing mix here is like you would use a cup of or a soda bottle with the top cut off, and you would fill that with mortar and then use so many caps full of dry dye to it. I guess you could do the same thing with wet dye. I'm just not used to it. So we're mixing up half of this and this round nose trout works well in this bucket. And here's our bucket of water, and have to be ever so careful not to use too much. And oh yeah, I have to figure out how to turn it red, so that means I'm using this dye with that. So if you're doing the whole side of a building or like hundreds of feet and you can't mix the mortar all at once, you just got one guy usually is best at doing this, and so you have to standardize, like use a cap full or something. But we're in a kind of a non-critical area, and I just don't want it to anything to be the white natural cement color. Okay, don't need my safety thing in there. And I got too much water, way too much water. Better. It's still kind of wet. It sticks on the trowel. Just have to be careful not to smear. Now notice this is more of a red, of a, I guess you call it terracotta color. See how it tinkles down the roof. I had a guy do a whole ridge. He used natural mortar, and he had these tinkle marks in every pan all the way up the roof. No one noticed it. It was when Hugo hit Charleston, and we did a bunch of about 8 or 9 slate and tile roofs. Now I could just keep going down here, or I can just stop it there. I think I'll do wipe the excess off, because I can't look at when it dries, it matches. I mean, it's not setting, but it's just dry. So that's a good sign as far as colorant. You have to be careful you don't have too much colorant to make the mortar weak. I can almost put the bucket underneath and catch what runs off. But I seem to be doing an okay job. Use the rest. There's that wire. I can cover that wire easily. I have the bucket underneath, so I can just cut that off. Now I could have mortared that up there where the silicone is, but it won't last because these tile will expand and contract in the heat, and the silicone will move with it easily. Through here, roll it up. A lot of guys won't do this. And some guys will come along with even a wet cloth, and some guys will come along with some muriatic acid. It just depends on how particular you, well, really where it is in the scheme of visibility. Okay, see how much that's same, that's the same same dye, just the difference in using tuck pointing, making our own tuck pointing mix, and using bagged mortar mix with the lime in it. And I want to build this out to about here, so there's a decent amount of mortar against the tile, so it makes a good connection. Mortar's really wet, but it makes it, it gives it suction to whatever it's. I put it on and kind of hold it so the suction develops. See what happens? So here it is, with the dye and brick mortar, with 1 part Portland cement to 3 parts sugar sand for the rest of this. There was a copper, there's some wire sticking out here. I went over that. Yes, we could wait here and smooth this all out and dress it up, and you know, there's a lot more you can do with it. And you know, some guys will smear it up here and it'll be all over the place. The parts that came down, that came down onto the tile, just wipe them off, and it's dark enough that you can't even see it. This chunk here fell out completely. It just did not suck up to the foamo fill, the great stuff. So I fabricated a lead finial, stuck it on with 100% silicone, and this is complete. Okay, here's another skill to add to the list. The more skills we can combine, the more we can justify. Look at this. I have a step ladder on a lift, right? And I can put my bucket right underneath where I'm working on, and watch, it falls and it goes right in the bucket, and it saves the time cleaning up on the ground. Also, on the other side, I needed a couple feet to reach the top to put that lead up there. It's easier than working on my knees. See, now that's gonna probably fall the first time. Yep. And then the second time, it sticks. It's typically how it goes. I need my little spatula trowel. I'm gonna build it down here so that it touches this piece and makes the bridge between the two pieces. And it's not the adhesion to the foam that makes it strong, but the adhesion to the there's enough fill. Now this doesn't need to be filled in, but it helps with the attachment blanking, stuff like that. So there's the foam. Take so much time with this. It's like you can't possibly see this from the ground. Most people can't even tell that there's not mortar in here. Look at this brand new ladder making a mess. I know. Make enough on this job to buy 100 of them, but only because it's not like this one skill, this one thing. It's the package, it's the putting it together. Appreciate your hanging in there while I think of these things to say while I'm working. Foam there. Gotcha. Now see where it comes together, this is gonna crack in no time. A lot of this is gonna crack, but it's gonna attach enough to keep varmints and critters from going in there and setting up home and creating a maintenance problem. Doesn't have paddle feet like ducks, right? Another thing we could have done is gotten some latex additive, or there's a latex bonding agent. They're about the same thing, and we could have painted this all with this latex bondings, and that would have helped bond it to. We could also have added the bonding agent, latex bonding agent, to the mortar mix here. And if you wanted to really go over the top, there's fiberglass fibers that you can add to this to make it sort of like fiberglass reinforced. But we didn't do that. Had I thought about it when I was in the shop, I have gallons of them not doing anything, and I could have added it to the mix. One of the things I don't like is that if you don't clean your tools quickly, it sticks and makes it really difficult to remove the mortar from the tools. Now I left this wire exposed because I'm going to cover it like that. And if it becomes exposed, I don't care. This piece is already foamoed in, nailed in, mortared in. It doesn't need the copper wire anymore. See all this I can just cover that silicone and that wire, just cover that right up. Just be surprised what you see some people do with mortar on a ridge. The terminal was made by a guy with his hands in a bucket of red mortar, and a terminal for this would have to be custom made, but even if you could get one that Ludowici makes to work, it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and the insurance company just isn't going to opt for it. They're going to say, well, just mold it like the other guy did. We'll replace what's there. So I fit the tile together. Like so. I could even go over that silicone and disguise it, but the mortar would, well, it might say for one. Just building this out because, oops, because I have the mortar to do it. And it blends in with this piece that has the wire underneath it. See, there's a little hole there. Some foam sticking out. Why not get this on here? Deprive a wasp of their nest. Alright, let's point it, sort of point it in. Where should I start? Down here. Now see where I scraped, where there's no sand, there's still mortar on there, but the weather will weather that off. It's when there's sand that the weather can't get in there and work its erosion magic and wear it away. So if I can get all the sand off there, then it's gonna clean up in a few years or something, but it'll only impress the next person who gets on this roof, because you can't possibly see it from the ground. There's the wires under that. Alright, now there's stuff stuck to the back of that, otherwise you could get this slick as snot. just tooling it in. Make sure that there's adhesion. Yeah, that's already starting to set up. So go back with a glove and just make sure there's not any sand mortar that has sand granules in it. This there's a little bit of foam here. I can easily scrape it off, but when the ultraviolet light of the sun hits it, it just turns it brown and then toast, and it's gone in no time. But I could hasten the process. All right. Okay, that's good enough for this purposes. We're not stuck wing a wall or anything.